Hi, Mike from Connected German, back with another video. Today we're going to be looking at question words, and specifically the question word who in German. Who works a little bit different than all of the other question words in German, so we're going to talk about how it has to work with the German case system. So what we're going to need for this video is your basic understanding of the case system in German, and essentially the cases stand for different roles that words can play in a sentence. And there's a link down below to another video if you need a little refresher course on that. Also, you will want to know the word who in German. In its basic form, it's wer. And this video actually applies to beginners and those at the intermediate level, depending on how many cases you've gone through. Even if you haven't gotten to some of the other cases, like the accusative and the dative case, or you don't remember them too well, this will be a good refresher or a good intro into it. Alright, so let's get into it. Question words. These essentially are words that begin open-ended questions like who, what, when, where, why, and how. And if you want to look at it from the grammar standpoint, this is also what's known as the interrogative pronoun. Now, question words in English, I'll put up that list again, who, what, when, where, why, and how. These are their German counterparts in that order. Wer, was, wann, wo, warum, and wie. And what we're really going to be focusing on, obviously, is the who. Not the band. Who. In German, it's wer. Okay, so why is wer so different than all of the other question words? And the biggest reason is it has to agree in case. So if we're talking about, for example, who versus whom, which really isn't used a whole lot anymore in everyday English, there is a difference between who and whom, and it has to do with subject or object. And we're really talking about, as I just pointed out, the role it plays in a sentence. Subject, the direct object, or indirect object. And so when we say it agrees in case, it really agrees with the role it plays. Now remember, if we're talking about the subject, when we use noun or pronoun, we're going to want to make sure that the subject is in the nominative case, direct object is in the accusative case, and our indirect object is in the dative case. And I'm going to kind of color code these. So throughout this video, red will be for the subject, blue will be for direct object. We don't really deal a whole lot with dative in this video. This is just to get an idea of how it changes. And in our next video is when we're going to be incorporating the dative a lot more. So the nouns and pronouns take these forms that reflect the roles in the sentence. And I'll explain what that means right here. Basically, if you're talking about wer, so you're asking who, you're referring to a person. And since a person can fill different roles in this sentence, it can either be the subject, the doer, the direct object, like a person that is being seen, for example. We need to make sure that that follows, that reflects that role. Again, think of it as the difference between who and whom in English. Now here's an example. Okay, whom do you see? Normally, what you normally hear is who do you see? Technically, it's incorrect. We should be using whom here. And the reason is you is the subject of the sentence, the person that's actually doing the seeing, and whom is the indirect object. It refers to the person that is being seen. Right? So this is what I mean by different roles. And because you have the whom as the direct object, it would take a little bit different form than if we were asking who. So let's take a look at an example of an answer to that question. You see the boy. Well, the boy here is the direct object. That is what is answering whom. If the boy is the direct object, and we would normally have to use the accusative case for it in this case, we also have to show that in the question word whom. Now, this is the only question word in German. Out of all the question words, it's the only question word that has to comply in case. Yeah, there you go. So we need to make sure our form of who reflects the role. The boy is the direct object. Whom has to be the direct object. 3 forms. When you're using who as the subject, you use wer. When you're using it as the direct object, we use wen. And when we're using it in the dative as the indirect object, it's wem. These are our 3 forms, and it actually lines up if you think about the masculine forms for the word the. As the subject, it's der. The object, direct object, it's den. Indirect object is dem. And notice the R, N, and M at the end. So for asking the question word who or whom, it parallels that very nicely. All right, now into our German examples. All right, so we want to form this sentence, or this question, who wants to eat bread for dessert? Okay, aside from the fact that bread really isn't the greatest dessert, just using it for the purposes of explaining, who wants to eat bread for dessert? Who in that sentence, is it the subject or the direct object? That's the first thing that we need to identify. What role is who playing in that sentence? And here's a little tip. Think about how we might answer that question. And the new information that answers the question who, like a person, we need to look at that role and make sure that that is paralleled in our question. So, for example, our new information, we answered that question, we said Bob. Bob wants to eat bread for dessert. So Bob, who is doing the eating, is the subject. So we need to make sure that our question word who also is in the form that parallels the subject. So that would be written as, we see in orange, wer möchte Brot zum Nachtisch essen? Okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at another example. Whom do you want to see? Is whom the subject or a direct object? Now, this is a problem for a lot of native English speakers who don't make a distinction between who and whom. Obviously, I'm kind of giving something away here because it's whom. It's obviously filling a little bit different role. So these are the things we need to think about. All right. Let's think of our possible answer to that question. I want to see Henry. All right? So now think about Henry, that new information. What role does it fill? Well, it's the direct object. It's not the subject. The subject is I want to see Henry. I is the subject. So we need to make sure that our question word parallels the direct object form. And in this case, if we remember back on the chart a couple slides ago, it wouldn't be wer, because we're not referring to the subject. What form would it be? Here's how that sentence would read. Wen willst du sehen? So not wer as the subject, wen as the direct object. Okay, and so what we're going to do in part 2, we're going to recap this. This is mainly, we dealt mainly with the subject and direct object, the nominative and the accusative. So we're going to recap on that a little bit. I'll give you a short quiz on it, on these forms. And then we're also going to use more examples with the dative case and see when exactly would we use this question word wem in a sentence. And that's going to be coming up in part 2. Thanks for watching, and be sure to stop by connecttogerman.com for more videos and tips for learning German. Thank you.